All right, aspirants, welcome. There's a huge shift happening right now in India's trade strategy, and it's all focused on South America. We're talking about the big plan to expand the India-MERCOSUR trade deal. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what this means for India and, most importantly, what you absolutely need to know for your exams.
Okay, to really get a grip on this, we're going to tackle it step by step. First, we'll cover the basics. What is MERCOSUR? Then we'll look back at the original agreement before diving into the new expansion plan, the trade numbers, and what's coming up next. Let's get right into it.
All right, first things first. Before we can even talk about the trade deal, we've got to be clear on who we're talking about. So what exactly is MERCOSUR? So MERCOSUR, it's short for Mercado Común do Sur, which is just the Southern Common Market. It's a huge economic and political bloc in South America. The easiest way to think about it? It's basically a customs union set up to make trade and economic partnership way easier among its member countries. Okay, this part is absolutely crucial for your exams, knowing the member states. The 5 full members are right here. Now, to make this really stick, here's a super simple mnemonic that's tied to the whole idea of trade. Buying and bartering produces unity. Just remember that phrase and you've got the members locked in. Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Easy, right?
All right, so how did we even get to this point? This whole new push for expansion isn't just starting from scratch. Nope, it's actually building on a foundation that was laid, believe it or not, many years ago.
Now, you're going to want to pay close attention to these dates. These are perfect for those chronology questions. The original deal was a Preferential Trade Agreement, or PTA, and it was signed way back in January 2004. But here's the kicker, a really key detail. It took another 5 years for it to actually become operational in June 2009. That kind of lag, pretty common in big international agreements.
So this is what that original deal looked like. It was a preferential agreement, and that's a key term. It wasn't a full-blown free trade agreement. What that means is instead of covering all goods, it just focused on a pretty limited list. India gave tariff concessions, which are basically just lower import taxes on 450 products, and MERCOSUR did the same for 452 products. So you can see it was balanced but also pretty limited. Just a first step, really.
And that limited scope, well, that's exactly why we're talking about this today. Both India and MERCOSUR looked at it and realized, hey, there's a ton of untapped potential here. And that brings us right up to the current news, the big high-level decision to finally expand this thing.
This quote from the official joint declaration just perfectly captures the new ambition. The key words you really need to focus on are substantial and significant share. That tells you everything. They're not just tweaking the old agreement, no way. They're aiming for a major overhaul to completely transform the entire trade relationship.
So here are the 4 key goals of this new mandate. And notice, it's not just about tariffs anymore. They're also tackling what are called non-tariff issues. Things like complicated customs procedures or product standards that can block trade just as much as any tax. Plus, they're bringing in businesses, the private sector, to make sure the deal actually works in the real world. And the most ambitious part? They want to get this all done and finalized within a single year. That's fast.
All right, time to get into the numbers. This is the kind of data that can seriously strengthen your answers in the mains. So what does the trade picture between India and MERCOSUR look like right now?
The one big headline number you need to lock into your memory is this, nearly $18 billion. That was the total trade value between India and the MERCOSUR bloc last year. That's our starting point, the baseline they are now aiming to blow past.
Okay, but this table, this is where you see the real complexity of the situation. So overall, India has a trade deficit with MERCOSUR. That means we import more than we export. But look closer. With Brazil, our biggest partner in the whole bloc, we actually have a trade surplus. But then you look at Argentina, and we have a huge deficit. A lot of that is because we import things like soybean oil. This really highlights why the negotiations are going to be so tricky, right? India's interests are actually different with each member country.
So the big question is, how are they actually going to get this done? Well, there's a very clear roadmap in place to move from just talking about it to getting a finalized expanded agreement on the books.
And here it is, the official 4-step roadmap. It all kicks off with technical discussions to sort of lay the groundwork. Then, an existing committee will meet up to define the official scope. It's only then that the formal talks will begin, with that really, really ambitious one-year deadline to get everything signed and sealed.
Okay, let's wrap this up and consolidate everything we've just covered. Here are the absolute key takeaways you need to have for your revision. No excuses. Seriously, this is the slide you want to screenshot. Let's just run through these core facts one last time. The block is MERCOSUR. Don't forget our mnemonic. The agreement type is a PTA, a preferential trade agreement. Key dates, signed in 2004, but didn't get going until 2009. The new goal, a substantial expansion, and they want it done within 1 year. And the key numbers, total trade is almost $18 billion with an overall deficit for India, but remember that crucial surplus with Brazil.
So we'll end with a question for you to chew on. Knowing the facts is step one, but the critical analysis is what comes next. I mean, that one-year timeline is crazy ambitious, but the real challenge is this. How can India's negotiators possibly balance our country's interests with the unique and, let's be honest, sometimes competing interests of 5 different South American nations? That right there is the strategic puzzle they now have to solve.